Everyone, DCB here, and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 Adepta Sorortas Sisters of Battle mod build. In this mod build, I am building the engine of Penance from the Sisters of Battle Army box set. Be building it in subsections, then painting those subsections off camera, then putting them together. Be using time-lapse footage for this particular build, giving you the lore and some of the rules of the unit, so I hope that you enjoy the video. Let's begin! Engines of Penance. Beneath many cathedrals and sanctums, there exists a vast dungeon, lined with the Ecclesiarchy's myriad torture devices. These dread machines are reserved for those who have sinned against the Emperor, and though arcane technologies, they transform the agony of their victims into a devastating weapon. Pennant Engines. To be a pilot of a Pennant Engine is to have committed a terrible crime, one so hideous that other punishments are deemed too lenient. Many of the unfortunates sentenced to pilot a Pennant Engine were once members of the Ecclesiarchy, priests fallen from grace, or sisters who have caused the death of their fellows. One so judged is wired into the crucible of a Pennant Engine, where torment amplifiers are spliced into their synapses and chemical injectors implanted into their spines. From that point on, these heartless individual is subject to endless suffering, their mind stripped of all thought except physical pain and spiritual guilt, the pain itself driving the Pennant Engine's agitators and servitors. Pennant Engine charges towards the foe, heedless of the danger, knowing that only in death, theirs or the enemy's, can absolution be earned. The arms of the engine, mounted with enormous flamers, blaze a trail of fiery destruction as it thunders forwards. Upon reaching the enemy, the chemical and synaptic inputs pumped into the pilot are altered, causing them to see their own face in the faces of the foe, thrashing at those before it, in each a reflection of their unfathomable guilt. Their rampage through the enemy battle lines, leaving death and carnage in their wake. Some engines bear adamantium tooth buzz blades that are capable of cleaving through plated tank armor, while others mangle flesh and pulverize bone with lashing swings of their multi-headed flails. Pennant Engines are often deployed beside the ranks of the Orders Militant. The Sisters of Battle consider it their sacred duty to witness these great machines in the fires of combat, observing the actions of their fallen brothers and sisters as they atone for past sins. Every enemy slain by a Pennant Engine's brutal stampede proves the righteousness of this form of punishment. Mortifiers. Aside from the unthinkable act from outright heresy, there is no greater sin among the Adepta Sorortas that when a repentica flees from battle, the sole duty of these sisters is to atone from their failings in battle, and to run from this fate is an evil from which there can be no forgiveness. A punishment these wayward repentica are wired into the crucible of a mortifier, based upon the same mechanical chassis as a Pennant engine. A modifier bears additional neuroaggressor arrays and optical enhancements that amplify the pilot's self-loathing exponentially. Mechanical bolts driven into the Repentica's bones, leaving her unable to move or even scream for death, while the battle hood placed over her head prevents her from hearing any words of pity that are spoken in her presence. Mortifiers are then placed on the front lines of battle, where they are driven into a frenzy by the intense spiritual suffering of their pilots. The engine lunges forward with terrifying speed, the leg pistons flailing and contracting in time with rapid jolts of anguish that shoot through the interred sister. As they bound forward, they spray hails of bolts and torrents of flame from their arm-mounted weapons, before launching themselves at the enemy and carving a path of mutilation. All joy that would come from seeing heretics torn to shreds is denied to the Repentica, stripped from their minds and replaced with more pain, that her only hope of release from this torment, from this cruel exile outside of the Emperor's light, is to find absolution in death. And yet, where Mortifier has sustained an obscene amount of damage, and the sister within senses her end is at last approaching, the pain of knowing she will die, unredeemed, sends the machine into a tormented death throe, a wild and final whirlwind of devastation. To those Repentica who have not just fled but betrayed their sisters in battle, an even worse fate awaits. After being wired into the crucible of their mortifier, they are further embound behind thick adamantine casing. These sarcophagus protect their tormented bodies from incoming fire and deliberately swung blades, denying them the release of death. Known as arbiters, the sisters behind these lifeless masks are forced to face their torments in absolute isolation, enduring years or even decades of agony before meeting their end. So that was the lore behind the Pennant Engines. And now to give you a breakdown of the rules. The Pennant Engine is one model, has a movement of 7 inches, a weapon skill of 4+, a ballistic skill of 5+, a base strength of 5, base toughness of 5, base wounds of 5, 4 attacks, 8 leadership, and a 4+ saving throw. The Pennant Engine is equipped with 2 heavy flamers and 2 flails. It can be equipped with 2 pennant buzzblades instead of the flails. The heavy flamer is an 8-inch range flamer weapon, has heavy D6 shots, strength of 5, AP of -1 and damage of 1. When resolving attacks made with this weapon do not make a hit roll, it automatically scores a hit. What that basically means is you roll a D6 and that is how many times you've hit the enemy. Opponent buzzblades are melee weapons with a strength modifier of +3, an AP of -3 and damage of 2. If the bearer is equipped with 2 of these weapons, then when the bearer fights it makes 1 additional attack using that profile. The Penitent Flail once again is a melee weapon. It's a strength modifier of +1, an AP of -2 and a damage of 1. Make 3 hit rolls for each attack made with this weapon instead of 1. If the bearer is equipped with 2 of these weapons, then the bearer fights and makes an additional attack using that profile. Has Berserk Killing Machine. When a model in this unit would lose a wound, roll a d6. On a 5+, that wound is not lost. So that makes this engine quite resilient to damage, even if there was a weapon that would ignore the armor it has. Basically on a 5+, it would ignore that wound anyway, making the Penitent Engines some very lethal close combat walker vehicles for the Sisters of Battle. Now the parts are painted in the sub-assemblies, it's time to get them stuck together like that on the legs, and then the arms at their angles at the top there, like so. There we have it. So, there we are. The Pennant Engine, all built, painted and ready for battle. I know I still need to work on the flames, but that is the Pennant Engine. You can see the lovely flesh of the poor chappie inside there, how tanned he is from exposure to sunlight and flamers. Hope that you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to comment on the video, like, rate, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Until the next time, this is DCB for the Emperor.